And this is coming from someone who's been there and who has your best interest at heart.
Thank
so,
you.
One of the great dilemmas in relationships, especially in the church, is how to start one. Can we be real about that? Right? All the single people, right? That is the weirdest part of this whole process. That's why I called the series From Here to I Do. How do you get from this weird place? You know, when you were in grade school, it was very easy, wasn't it, right? If you're a boy, you walked up to a girl and you punched her in the arm, and then all of her friends are like, he likes you, right? And then it was on. If you were a girl, you wrote a note, right? And it was check yes or no or maybe or later, and then you would fold it, origami style into a heart or a swan, right? And then he would try to open it, and he didn't know how to do it, and so it was all chaotic. But see, in real life, how do we do that? How do we get from here to I do? So we're going to discuss tonight the dating roadmap. Genesis 2, I want you to read with me, beginning in verse 18. So the Lord said, "It is not good that man should be alone. I'll make him a helper comparable to him. And out of the ground the Lord formed every beast of the field and every bird of the air and brought them to Adam to see what he would call them. Whatever Adam called each living creature, that was its name. So Adam gave names to all of them." Verse 21, "And the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. And the rib that the Lord had taken for man, he made into woman. And he brought her to the man, and Adam said, 'This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh.'" Let's talk first about before you date. It seems to be that one of the most confusing parts of dating is actually before you're actually dating, right? How do you get from 0 to 100, from single to mingle? How do you get there? What are the steps or the process to getting there? And this is actually where we make most of our mistakes. You see some people, they jump in without thinking. This is what you see in the world. You find someone, we were both drunk, you look cute, right? At least until the alcohol wears off. Let's go, right? And so this is the problem. A lot of people approach relationships like that. We're just going to jump in. You find someone, pair off, and you're an item. And they haven't thought about it. They haven't given any kind of logical reason to this. Then, of course, you have others. They make commitments that are too big, too soon. Right? I've counseled this many times. There's a young couple, and they're talking, and on their second date, he says, "I love you more than anything in the whole world. Will you? You're the one for me." Right? He buys her, 5 dozen roses. Well, bro, you don't even know her surname yet. Maybe you're going a little too fast, right? And then you have many people in the church, they will avoid it entirely because of intimidation. It seems too difficult and frightening. And so there's some people, they just ignore it, right? I've encountered that in every church I've pastored. Young, single people, hey, what's the deal? Are you gonna get married at some point? "Oh, Pastor, I don't even want to talk about that," because they're afraid or they're intimidated. The problem is that if you let that go on too long, desperation and the clock will lead you to make very foolish decisions. There's a news story years ago, and the headline was, "No longer looking for Mr. Right, now she's looking for Mr. Right Now." This lady, she actually had made an announcement in the newspaper, "I am getting married on," she named the date, "and I'm going to be there, but there's no guy yet, so hey, if you want to get married, just show up." Now, to some of us, that sounds very extreme. To some of you, you're thinking, But see, that's a problem. This is the consequence is that people aren't making healthy choices. Listen, the reality is relationships need time to develop before they become official. We need to be able to develop a friendship or a relationship with someone without the pressure of what we call dating. Dating too soon, it changes the script. It changes people's expectations or our ideas. It's very hard to go backward. Once you start dating, how do you go back and build the foundation of the relationship? In other words, how do you put the foundation in when you're already painting the walls and picking out furniture? This is why stage one of any relationship ought to be what I call talking. Anyone who's asked me, I will give them this advice. Don't date, talk. This is a different kind of relationship. This literally is just friends. We are just going to talk and get to know each other. Now, I believe this ought to be the most common part of the relationship, and it ought to be the longest part of the relationship, with the exception of marriage. Now, consider the advantages here. You can get to know someone without any pressure or expectations, right? If you let the church know, all right, me and her, right, me and him, we are now dating, all of a sudden everyone's looking at you, ooh, right? Many of us have experienced that. And you can say hi, like, oh, did you see? See, that's weird. That changes everything. If you could just talk to someone like, hey, how are you? Like, talking is, some people say, what does talking mean? Like, is there like rules? How much money can you spend on a gift? No, it's talking. It's literally just talking. Talk to someone. You can get to know them. You can learn things about them. There's this incredible advantage. There's no pressure. You'll learn things about them. You'll learn things about you. If you will talk to people, you'll actually learn what you want. Now, the problem is single people think I'm crazy when they say that. What do I want? I want a woman, right? Listen, it's more complicated than that. If you will learn to talk to people, you'll actually get a much better idea of what you actually want. Ladies, you don't want just a guy. You don't want just some man, right? He can speak 4 words in a row. It seems like he's got 4 brain cells. Listen, you want more than that. That is why we talk first. And you talk to them. How are you? Man, how was your week? What happened? How are things going? How's work? How's mom? Right? Whatever. You can have a conversation and you learn things about them. And then, of course, you can decide that you don't want to date them and nobody's feelings get hurt. That's the beauty of it, right? You can talk to someone, right? Hey, how are you? And then, and inside you're going, nope, not happening. But there doesn't have to be any drama. There's no breakup. Listen, here's the problem. If we don't get the talking phase right, what happens is, in enough time, church becomes this minefield of all the people you used to date. And it gets weird. That's why you shouldn't date them yet. You should just literally talk to them. Get to know someone and find out what kind of person they are. Let me give you some practical advice for talking or navigating this zone of the relationship. Listen, the majority of the talking phase should happen in a group context, right? At church, at the 180, on outreach, fellowshipping with a group of people from the church. This is very practical. This keeps it informal, right? When you pair off, when you go on a date, I know this is all very complicated, but when you go on a date, you're dating. That's why you don't go on dates when you're talking. You just talk. You go out with the group and you talk to them, and you don't make it something weird, right? In groups, you can talk to someone without there being drama. You can just have a conversation. And listen, as a church, let me just say this to everyone, even the married people. We need to allow this. You need to allow people to talk to each other without making it weird, right? Oh, hey, I saw you were talking to so-and-so. Really? So when's the wedding? You know what? That's stupid. And church, grow up. Can we be adults about this? Let people talk. That's good preaching, Pastor HEIMBURG. Thank you. Number 2, it is helpful to have boundaries between talking and dating. Make a distinction. If you're talking, you're talking. If you decide you're going to move on into dating, fine, but let it be different. Make an emotional distinction. Don't pledge your love to someone you're talking to, right? Just talk to them. Don't make it more than it needs to be. And then, of course, the inevitable question, how long should you talk before you date? And the answer to that is yes. I don't have a number. You guys have probably figured this out now. I'm not a big fan of numbers and time frames and all these frameworks. But let me give you some guidelines. Number one, remember, dating is for marriage. That's it. So in other words, you should never date, ever, unless marriage is a possibility. Right? That means if you live with your mom, you shouldn't be dating. Amen, Pastor Heimburg. Thank you. That was a good point. I appreciate it. Right? If you don't have a job, if you're a man and you don't have a job, you shouldn't be dating. Right? If you're too young to get married, you shouldn't be dating. So that also means you shouldn't be talking, because this is all connected. So here's some very practical guidelines. Don't get involved in these kinds of relationships unless marriage is a possibility. So then after you've talked for some time, if both of you decide you want to pursue the relationship, you can move on to dating. If not, don't rush into it. I've had people ask me, Pastor, we've been talking and it's been this many months, so now we have to start dating, or now we have to. No, you don't. That's the point of talking. There is no time frame. There's no pressure here, right? I'm never going to show up and pull out my calendar, all right? Well, as of tomorrow, you've been talking for blah, blah, blah. Why aren't you dating yet? That's never going to happen here, because that's not right. That's not biblical. And so then, of course, if you decide you don't want to date them, that's fine. So let's talk then about dating itself. Again, I'm going to emphasize this over and over and over because of the inevitable questions. This doesn't apply to everyone. Dating is not for everyone. Just because you can hear my sermon tonight doesn't mean that you have got your dating license. Right? No, Pastor, I was there. I heard the course. No, remember, if you're not qualified for marriage, you are not qualified for dating. Amen. I'm just going to make sure that we're all clear on that. Because I'm going to have somebody's mom come up to me, mijito, right? That's in Spanish. That's like my little son. Mijito, he wants to date. Yeah, he's 11. He shouldn't be dating, okay? He still doesn't even know where the back of his head is, all right? Let him figure that out, right? Think for a moment about why dating matters. Dating is different than talking, because now you are focusing your time on one person to get to know them better in order to pursue a relationship. It's going to change now. Whereas talking would happen in only group settings or generic, informal, to more personal settings where you can have more meaningful conversations. Now, remember, the point of dating is not because you've made up your mind, this absolutely is the one that I must marry, but it's because you think there's a good chance this might be the one that you marry. That's why we've moved to the next level now. You are still in the process of discovering if this is the one you want to spend the rest of your life with. And so dating allows you now to discuss different things. Things that are difficult when you're just talking and you're in a large group. You can talk about marriage, and you need to. If you're dating, you need to have the conversation. So what do you think about marriage? What are your expectations of marriage? Rachel and I talked. How many kids do you want to have? Trust me, it wasn't this many. Things got way out of hand somewhere. Now, I'm glad we had them all, but that wasn't the plan. But can we be practical? How do you talk about that when you're in a group of 15 people at Wimpy's? You can't, right? When you're sitting there next to your bros and it's like, hey, so what do you think about marriage? I'm like, whoa, it'll get really weird. That's why we date. So we can have those conversations without all these people around eavesdropping on us, right? You should get to know important things about them. Ask them about their goals in life, their plans for ministry, or their walk with God. You need to get to know them at a deeper level than what is your favorite color or favorite kind of music, right? So let me give you some wisdom for dating. Number one, if you are at a place where you are considering dating, you need to date because you are pursuing God's will, not because you are lonely. I want to tell you, loneliness is the wrong reason to start dating. A good friend of mine, his name's Garrett King. He's a pastor in the U.S. He preached some time ago, and he made this statement. He said, if you are desperate, don't date. The land of desperation is one of the most dangerous places for a single person. You will lower your expectations, your standards, and commit your life because of desperation. Listen, don't date just because you're lonely. Date because you believe this is God's will for your life. Number two, you must protect your righteousness. One of the absolute non-negotiable issues is moral purity in the relationship. Your relationship should not be physical in any way. Pastor, how much? In any way. But Pastor, can I? If you feel you need to ask the question, the answer is no. Amen. Thank you. Listen, there's a reason for that. It's because when you allow a relationship to get physical, you will ruin the whole process. There's a short circuit there. When you are talking and you are doing things the proper way, God will allow you to get revelation about this person. You'll be able to make an accurate character assessment. But I preached a couple of months ago. One of the problems is if you let someone touch you, you will trust them. This is especially true for young ladies. If you let a man touch you, there's something weird in the psychology and the chemistry. You'll trust him when you shouldn't. Right? And very practical. If he's touching you, you really shouldn't trust him. But something happens in that. There's a short circuit in the process. If you introduce physical contact into your relationship, it becomes very difficult, maybe even impossible, to make clear judgments about a person's suitability for marriage. You need to protect your testimony. Right, beyond whether or not you are doing right, do you appear to be doing right? 1 Timothy 5:14, give no opportunity for the adversary to speak reproachfully. In other words, you've got to protect the appearance of your relationship. And then, of course, you need to observe some practical boundaries. Again, these aren't rules, these aren't laws, but this is wisdom from someone who cares about you. And listen, this is also wisdom from the person who's going to have to clean up the mess if you mess up. Can I just help you out? If you get to the dating phase, let me give you some wisdom that will save your life and it will save your marriage. Don't be alone, right, in a car. Don't be alone in a house. Don't be alone in the dark, right? You can feel, right? This is just wisdom. If you want to make it, if you want to be able to resist temptation and do it, just use your brain, right? You know, there's a story someone shared with me recently. I forget where it came from. Apologies if it's one of you that told me. But someone was telling me that there was a friend of theirs that had gotten saved. They were a former alcoholic. And then sometime later they said, oh man, you know, it was terrible. I started drinking again. It was terrible. And he said, what happened? Well, I was witnessing to all my friends. Where were you witnessing to your friends? At the bar. You know what? If you don't want to get drunk, don't go to the bar. Right? Does that make sense? Am I the crazy one? Or does that make... Listen, if you want to protect your relationship, stay away from some of these practical things. Don't be in places that give good people a reason to question you. You need to be careful about how you talk and when you talk. Listen, when you are dating, the danger is you'll let your mouth get ahead of you. And that is dangerous. If you're not careful, your mouth can take you places that you shouldn't allow it. You need to be cautious about when you talk. You know, Rachel and I did have an advantage. When we dated, there are a few of you here that might remember, it was the dark ages. We didn't have cell phones. Right? And there's people right now that they're like, no, you're lying. There was always cell phones, right? It even says Moses had 2 tablets. What are you talking about? Now, let me tell you, really and truly, So Rachel and I'd be like this. We'd be at church on Sunday night, and if we weren't going out that night, I'd be like, okay, I'll talk to you Wednesday. Because that was the next time we were going to be at church. Or we would have to, if we're going to go on a date, we'd have to organize it at church. All right, okay, Tuesday, I'll meet you at whatever at such and such time. That was it. We didn't have to worry about this, but now everyone's got a phone in their pocket. Can I just give you some advice? Don't be stupid. Right? I should make a t-shirt, right? Pastor HEIMBURG says, don't be stupid. But listen, do you think that you should be talking or texting in the middle of the night? Probably not. That doesn't make sense. That's not wise. Everything changes in your personality. Your inhibitions are lower, right? People aren't watching. You need to be thoughtful about these things. So let's think about for a moment when dating doesn't work. Listen, it is okay to stop dating. And I feel like that needs to be emphasized. In every church I've ever pastored, this is a major hurdle or a major battle. Our church culture must allow people to date and then stop dating with no shame. That should be the whole point. I was talking with the pastor a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, and we were talking about this, and he says, well, I got this dilemma when a young man, he was dating this girl, but then he came to me and he said, Pastor, she's really not the one. I don't think I should marry her, so now he broke up with her, but now he wants to date a different girl in the church. And I was like, okay. And he's like, so? And I was like, okay. It's like, but how could I allow him to do that? I was like, bro, I don't even understand the question. What are you asking me? Well, he already, I could tell, he broke up with one. Yeah, that's good, actually. Listen, the key to a really good marriage is maybe break up with the one you shouldn't marry. Right? And I say stuff like that, and people, their eyes, but that's common sense, right? Right? Some of you are really liking this sermon. Some of you are really not. If we create a culture in which you must marry the person you date, otherwise there's this heavy shame, think for a minute about the consequences. There's going to be some that they won't get married. They just simply won't, or they'll delay. They are afraid. There are people here, I bet even tonight, you are afraid of dating. You're afraid of the idea of a relationship because of this. What if they're not the one? That's okay. You can say, this is not for me. I'm not pursuing this any longer, and that's okay, and it's healthy. The other possibility, of course, is we'll have people that end up in unhappy or unhealthy marriages. If we create a culture where you have to marry the first person you date, there are bad consequences there. But here are some helpful tips for the end of the dating process. Number one, be honest, please. Don't let it drag on unnecessarily. Right? I've witnessed this. I've seen relationships where it's like you can tell one of them is not into it, but they can't bring themselves to say it. Right? And so then it's like, it's our 2-year dating anniversary, right? And I can tell homeboy is not into it. Bro, just tell her, right? You got to be honest. You've got to just say, you know what? I'm sorry. Listen, this is not working out. It's not you, it's me, right? Whatever. It was the alignment of the, I don't know, whatever but be honest and say something. Don't hold on to them forever. Number two, be kind. Listen, just because someone isn't the one for you doesn't mean they are evil. This is very important. I've witnessed this from men and women all throughout my ministry where there's a relationship and for whatever reason it doesn't work out. Maybe they had an argument or what, I don't know what the deal is, right? It doesn't work out, and then one of them, oh yeah, actually, he's the devil. Well, why did you date him for 6 months if he was the devil, right? Is your judgment really that bad? Listen, be nice. Guys, I've seen do the same. Oh, yeah, you wouldn't believe the things she said. Listen, guys, let me help you out here, right? She has friends, and you might want to date one of her friends. So when you do break up with her, be kind. That's just tactical advice right there. Let me take it a little further. How foolish, how immature is it that you make someone the enemy simply because they're not the one for you? And let me even enlarge on that. Isn't that also one of God's precious children? Be very careful what you say about them in the end of the relationship. And then finally, this might be the hardest bit of advice to follow, but please don't be awkward. It is very likely that this will happen. People in this church will date other people in this church and it won't work out. You know what? Fine, that's great, but don't make it weird. Don't turn into this, there's these vibes, right? And people are like, hey, I was talking to Bobby the other day. Who? I don't know, who is that? Right? Come on. He was your lock screen for 3 years. You know who it was, right? Don't make it weird, right? Just be an adult about it and move on with life. Listen, let me put this another way. If you create vibes when there's a breakup, you know what you're doing? You're punishing all of us for your relationship. So let's talk finally about the engagement. This is the third stage of the dating relationship. What is the point of an engagement? This is the final stage of the relationship before marriage. You've determined this is definitely the one. Now you're planning a wedding. Just like with dating, I believe there should be a clear change. There should be a moment in which you say, okay, now we are engaged, right? Depending on what's normal to you, right? Most people, there will actually be an event, right? The man gets a ring, right? Hopefully it's a nice ring, right? But maybe not. That's cool. Sometimes you go to the store and you can put the coin in, right? That's cool, man. If that's all you can afford, I'm okay with that. Ladies and gentlemen, let me help you out with something. If your standard for whether a man is good enough for you or not is how much he spends on the engagement, you're not ready to be married. You're not ready. You don't have the necessary maturity. Because if the little piece of metal around your finger, if that's the thing, you got a lot of growing up to do before you're ready for marriage. Now, that wasn't in my notes, but I felt that one. I just needed to say that, so... Right, but the point is there's a change. Will you marry me? Yes, I would love to. Now we are engaged. It's a different relationship, right? The purpose changes. In dating, we are discovering if this is the one I want to marry. Once you decide this is the one, now we're going to make it official. Let's get married. So the engagement, we are now planning a wedding. That is the whole point of the engagement. It's a formal declaration of your intent to marry, and now a practical time period in which you are planning the wedding. So then this answers the next obvious question. How long should an engagement be? And listen, I promise you, none of you are going to like my answer. And the answer, and the reason you won't like it is because it makes sense. The engagement should be as long as it takes to plan a wedding. And let me let you in on a secret. It doesn't take that long. Right now, Rachel and I, we were engaged for 6 months. The only reason it was 6 months and not 4 months, was simply because her parents lived in Kenya and they were moving back, and so we decided to wait until they moved back, and that was just a practical decision. It would have been 4 months. It didn't even need to be 4 months, right? Years ago, there was a couple that got saved in the church in Hobbs in revival. It was a great revival. They got saved on Sunday. I think it was Sunday night. It's been too many years to know exactly. On Monday, they came to me, Pastor, we know we need to get married. We want to get married in church. I said, great, when you get married? He said, as soon as possible. Well, I mean, but literally, what do you mean? I said, in the way it works in the U.S., you go to the court and they give you a license to marry. It's very easy. It costs like $20, and it happens in minutes. They said, we'll go get the license tomorrow. Can you marry us tomorrow night? I said, we got a wedding on. Let's do this thing, right? Homeboy went down to wherever. He bought a basic little ring. She was standing there looking around. She's about the same size as me. Do you have a dress I can borrow? We got some little kids, right? You're going to carry the flowers. Called the lady who's in charge of the kitchen, order a cake. In 24 hours, we had a wedding. Y'all looking at me weird. How long do you think it takes? Listen, ladies, I know you, so don't even try to to fake me out. I'm noticing we got a lot more ladies on this half of the congregation. I'm going to, just give me a minute. Ladies are like, no, I have to pick out my dress and my colors. You lie. You knew your colors when you were 6. You knew what your dress would look like when you were 7. You probably already own it, right? You've had it. You know what? A woman has her wedding planned since she's very little. The only thing she doesn't know, there's a little cutout where the guy's face is. She's got the whole wedding plan, right? You don't need 6 months, a year, 2 years to plan a wedding. That's ludicrous. The engagement should be as long as it takes to plan a wedding. I believe it should be shorter rather than longer. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But it's a practical time frame. In other words, we lengthen the beginning phase. Talking should be longer because you're still trying to decide. But once you know, right, once you've made up your mind, we're getting married, get married. Get it over with. If this is the one, if you believe, and now you're engaged, there is no reason to wait any longer. So let's talk then just for a moment about the risks in engagement. You need to understand the enemy works overtime to destroy godly relationships. And engagement increases the risk. Now you're spending more time together. You're talking about the wedding. You obviously are feeling very close to this person. This is the danger zone. I've counseled couples who fornicated before they were married, and you ask them, and they said, well, we were engaged. I knew I was going to marry her. It didn't seem like a problem, but they brought destruction in their relationship. The pressure of this time frame can put your relationship at risk, right? Planning a wedding can be high stress. Listen, every man who's been there, right? You know, your bride-to-be will hold up 5 identical looking pieces of paper, right? And say, which one do you like the best? Is this a trick question? No, it's for our invitations. Which color do you like the best? They're all white. What do you mean? They are not all white. I can tell already. You don't know the difference between ivory and, right, and the tension goes up. You know what else happens? The family gets involved, right? When the engagement, now all of a sudden, you're going to have to fight this battle. Ladies, you're going to have to fight this battle. Is it your wedding or is it your mom's wedding? And let me tell you what the correct answer is. It's yours. You can tell Mom, I love you so much, and you're invited to the wedding. Until then, if you want to offer advice, wonderful. But listen, every mom ever, since the beginning of time until the end of time, has tried to manipulate her daughter's wedding. Well, but I just really think it's... And don't you think, did you see it, right? Mom, right? Of course, the cultural thing's going to come in now, right? Oh, are you getting married at that church? Yes, I'm getting married at that church. That's what we do. But, you know, for generations, right? Our family has always, yes, and for generations, our family has been addicted and divorced and messed up. I'm a Christian, I'm getting married in church. So now you're going to have all these new pressures in engagement. This is a danger zone. There's also a risk in engagement that you might ignore some warning signs. Listen, I understand that engagement means that you believe this is the one for you, but please, don't blind yourself to warning signs. I've watched people. There's a couple, one in particular, Rachel and I were friends with. They were about to get married, and you could tell she wasn't happy, right? All of a sudden, you know, I knew them kind of superficially, but the bride-to-be began to confess to my wife, I don't feel right about this. There's been some things that he's said or that have happened. I really don't believe that we should get married. And so, you know, Rachel, you need to talk to pastor about this. But she said, no, it's just too embarrassing, right? My family already spent all this money. People are already invited. I'm embarrassed. And so she went on and married him anyway. They are not married today. It was absolute chaos and insanity. Listen, just because you're engaged, don't ignore the warning signs. On the day of my wedding, 2 very frightening things happened to me. The first was Rachel showed up a little bit late to the pictures. We were doing pictures before the wedding, right? Sunday morning before church, so we're meeting early, and I'm there, and she's not there. And my great insecurity, that's it. She's given up on me. It's over, right? Then she showed up. I survived that crisis. But then my very own father went to Rachel and said, "Are you sure about this? Are you sure he's the one?" And he wasn't questioning me. He was making it clear to her that she still had the option. If you don't believe this is right, don't get married. It doesn't matter if all the flowers are bought, if the dress is tailored, if the guests have already showed up. If there are clear warning signs, do not get married. And you need to understand that you have your pastor's support in that decision. And I hope you have the church's support. Listen, just because you've spent money or it's embarrassing, don't commit yourself to a lifelong relationship that God doesn't want for you. But that brings us to the glory of a Jesus people wedding. Listen, we are aiming for something special in all of this. It's not just a hookup, but it's a glorious union in which Christ is glorified. If you can follow this roadmap correctly, the day will come when you'll get to stand here before the whole church and say, we are clean before God. You can testify to your family of what Jesus has done in your life. Christ can be glorified in your marriage, in the wedding. And so listen, here is the target. It's not just that you can be married and move on with life, but that you can be married in such a way that it makes impact. And here's the glory of this. I can testify 23 years later. We got married in 1999, July 11th. 23 years later, I can say when you glorify God in the dating phase, in the beginning of this, listen, God will help your entire relationship. God will get involved in every aspect of it. He'll help you in all the drama before the wedding, but most importantly, He'll help you every day after. Amen. Let's bow our heads together. If you're going to be baptized this evening, you can be dismissed to the back. You can go and begin to change and prepare for that. And anyone who wants to be baptized in water, make your way towards the back. They'll show you where you need to go if you need help.
Okay, if we can.
The rest of us, while we're here,
go ahead and stop that.
If you're not a born-again Christian,
so,
you desperately need to be. The Bible says we've all sinned. All of us have come short of God's glory.
We've got a few moments here.
None of us are righteous, not a single one.
He said
and the Scripture
many
tells us the
things.
penalty for our sin
notes,
is death, not just the death of our body, but the eternal condemnation of our soul.
Let's go for it.
The Bible tells us that there is no answer for our sin in our human ability. We don't have the power to change ourselves. You've already figured that out. We don't have the power to cleanse ourselves from sin. But here's the wonderful good news.
Sure. Yes.
I guess observation from him.
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate that, Amber. All right. Wow. Yes, Veronica.
I have a question. So, like, when he was talking about the talking, right? I was thinking that probably does not include. Well, I had a question because a long time ago, I remember Miss Yolanda Ruby had said that she went to eat with a bunch of guys, right? And she wasn't saying. She was just saying like she went to go eat here and there and here and there.
Okay.
And then she was like, no, it was, but it wasn't like dating. So I guess they just were just talking, and it wasn't a big deal. Like go get coffee, go do something small. It's not like we're officially dating.
Yeah.
It was just something. So that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yes. Yes. Melissa?
He did say like not to be alone because so some people
Like pairing off? No. Okay.
during the talking though, right?
Yeah, the talking phase, he talked about there being possibly a time where you could talk further. So, I know a lot of this has to do with, where you're at in your life experience-wise. I can't give you an exact answer as far as my general statement to the church is when you start pairing off, it gets very dangerous because it can go from just talking to late nights to like you get unaccountable and you put yourself in a position of temptation. So, you know, you would want to be in some kind of setting where there's others around for the most part. As far as wanting to do things by yourself, possibly, I don't know, I would have to, I'm not really sure there. It could get kind of sticky. But a pretty, you know, if the man is a good man, he probably doesn't want to get you by yourself. But if you want to be by yourself with somebody, be careful.
Well, I was just saying because Miss Ruby said it, and I think she's a good lady.
Yeah, Miss Pastor Ruby is a good lady.
Yeah.
Pastor Ruby's wife, Yolanda, is a great lady.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never heard her say that to me. I don't know. I would want to ask. You know, was that in a group setting? You know, maybe when he's here, you could ask her. I'm not sure about. Like, I can't answer that for that part. But just as a general thing, it's good to be in.
And then I do have a question, like I know we have younger people too, right?
Mhm.
And so I think when not talking, but when they're actually dating,
Okay.
they can go on dates alone. They just should not go in the car together alone, right? He said, just don't be in your home alone, don't be in
Yeah, he
the
said some
car
things.
alone. But they
Yeah.
can go, and in the dark, but they can go by
Yeah.
themselves to eat somewhere. or
Yes,
hang
when
out
the
or
dating
whatever.
phase starts to happen, yeah. I will say, and I know you're not saying this, but sometimes people gravitate toward this. This is not rules to dating. This is like wisdom. Like out of your own Christianity and convictions, you know, you need to formulate your boundaries. You know, you're not like, okay, you can do this, can't do this, can't do that. Well, can I grab your hand? Well, can I kiss your cheek? No, there's no way no one can micromanage a life like that. You have to have convictions, godly convictions. If you compromise in that area, then you're going to suffer the consequences. Yeah.
Well, the only reason I was asking is because I remember Amber had told me that her pastor had told them, if you're never like in a dating situation, if you're never alone, right, then you never have the opportunity to see what they're really like. What if they always have this front? What if they're, you know what I'm saying? Like in that sense, which makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, if you were listening, I'm sure you were listening to the whole video. He talked about a portion that when you start dating, now that person's going to show you a different side. You know what I mean?
But not if it's
You,
still in a group
the person you really get to see, like the real person, is who they are before they're dating you. How do they treat people they can't help? When there's time for volunteer to help, how do they respond? That's you know, when there's no incentive on their part, because when you start dating, you want to look good to the other person, so you're going to show your best side. So you really get to know people before, like, oh, okay, how are they with this? How are they with that? Like maybe they only come to church once every month, but then you showed, hey, you know, maybe I'll start talking now. He's here all the time, and he's not necessarily here to hear the preaching or to build worship of God, but he wants you, which you may like, but once you get married, you're going to want him to like God more than he likes you. So those are the tensions you're dealing with right there, the before, the after, the during. Because usually when you start dating, hey man, y'all are charged, y'all like each other. You know. So Amber, you have something?
Ron actually said it, but a little portion of it in the sense of one thing I think going forward, I was going to say personally, because I think I might need to ask you your opinion, because I mean, I love my old pastor, don't get me wrong, and everybody who's married is still married today, but I think that was my issue, because nobody put a gun in my head, but I will say, I did go to my pastor and tell him, and it was literally the week of the wedding, and I love my children, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I couldn't explain it, I just didn't feel like I was supposed to be doing this, but the word that was said to me, I just think you're afraid to have a man over your life, because you've been single for so long, and so, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I mean, I couldn't prove that was wrong, because I had been doing it by myself, you know what I'm saying? The Lord me going on divorce today, but nobody put a gun in my head,
Sure.
okay? I made a final decision, but I'm just saying, that's why I said I appreciate the video, because I wouldn't have my children, so that would make me cry, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I know who
yes.
they are today, but I'm so grateful for them that they can know, they can go to their pastor and say, no, I don't think that this is the one, and it doesn't mean that person's evil, because I don't think that person's evil, you understand where I'm coming from? It didn't work for us.
Sure.
I think we cause
understand.
badness out of ourselves. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like,
I understand, yeah.
with her, maybe that would have been the man of God, and you would see them excel or whatever. Pastor would reach on that. What was it? The last single thing we had, he said, "You even make that man run toward his calling." And somebody correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Or jump off the edge of the cliff or something like that.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, there's,
And just the weirdness of it, because people do make you, I mean, my God, somebody says hi to you and it's like, oh my gosh, and then said hi to him.
yeah, that's not a good response.
Yeah.
That's not a good response. Yeah, Rick?
What I got out of it was, like, you find out a lot of that stuff that they're talking about is during the talking phase. It seems like,
Yeah.
I found out that, I mean, you
Sure.
know, and so that's what it seemed like.
Yeah.
And you find out, like, just, and especially, like, churches, people are always fellowship and talking. You know, you see somebody's character. It seems like when you go out and fellowship with them,
You do see a lot of that, yeah.
Somebody's, you know what I mean?
Yep, you're right.
And so, I know that you had, I think I had told you, when you go out and fellowship with other people from church, I'm pretty sure you don't see their character that much because they're fellowshipping with just a group that they don't know, but unless you fellowshipping with them a lot.
Yeah.
But with marrying somebody from a different church, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, you can marry someone from a different church. You can. I mean, we're not gonna. By no means, I'm not telling you who to marry, not to marry.
Yeah.
The Bible says you should marry someone who's a Christian.
Yeah.
So God's will is for you to marry another Christian. Wisdom says, I want to see how their Christian devotion is. So wisdom means that you see that within your own church. It's wise to pick someone within your own congregation. That doesn't mean that you can't marry somebody else from another church and it doesn't work out. It could work out. It could be really good. But you're just taking that little bit of a risk. Because once you, like I said, once you start the dating thing, people will not, show you, they want to show you the better side of their life. So that's just general wisdom in that. Yeah. Yes, Cynthia.
You said to not trust a man if you try to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Me personally, I know I'm probably weird when I was dating James. I was worried about it, but I wouldn't shake his hand because I had a background of a bad background.
You had an immoral background.
Immorality.
Okay.
So I know even just shaking my hand was like, oh, I will take it to the next level. Like, so just say that.
Yeah.
That's what I was like. But then I don't want to be all weird, like, oh, shake my hand. So I'm a huggy person too, but I was like, oh, stay away because
Yeah.
I like the attention. So
Yeah.
I want to take care of myself.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Very good. All right. Okay. Well. Yes. Nigel.
And I'm the only youth one that has a question. Hopefully it's not weird.
The young people ask questions. Yeah.
No, this one's oddly specific. I'm just curious because I think like when he was talking about the engagement phase, like when that final decision is made, like when the dude proposes.
Yeah.
Right. Normally, what happens right there is they'll like run and hug each other, or sometimes like even share a kiss or something like that. But I'm saying like you wouldn't do that, of course, right? Because you're not officially married yet. So
Where do we learn that from? That we just
yeah,
want to
that's
hug
in
each
the
other?
world. But I'm
Yes.
saying like
Correct.
I'm saying, but if when you're to do it, you just stand there and say like
Give a high
yes.
five.
Well, I guess you're planning the day you're going to engage with somebody and how you're going to go about it. That's your personal decision, but everything with purity.
Okay.
Purity. Save yourself for the honeymoon and then have many kids. Okay. Somebody else. Leanne Garcia?
I have a question, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like, when you start that talking process and you're dating somebody or you're talking with them, but then they start asking for help with money and financial.
That's a red flag. It's a red flag.
Sometimes everyone needs help every now and then, but then it's like, are they really need help or are they really just using?
Yeah, they're looking for a sugar daddy. Yeah. So it's a red flag. You can help them, but don't be shocked. They ask you again and again. So
There's a lot of people who say they like the bad guys, they don't like the good guys.
right. So which one are you trying to be? Okay. Too funny. Okay, what else? That's it? Oh, yes, ma'am.
I was gonna tell him, like, in the video, he was like, if you're struggling, you shouldn't be dating, period. And, like, if you don't, like, basically, if you don't have yourself together, you shouldn't be seeking attention from someone else.
Yeah.
So, if somebody instantly asking you for some help, that's a red flag.
Okay. All right, there's some advice right there. Yes, Ella?
I'm just saying the woman is the same way, right? She's the one who's giving in the money, you know?
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and stop, guys. We're gonna go ahead and stop. We'll get ready for church. God bless you.